Every time you say you're single, watch their faces. Not carefully, casually. There's a shift, a pause that's half a second too long, a smile that feels slightly forced, a question that sounds innocent, but isn't. Oh, you're still single? They don't congratulate you, they don't respect you, they try to fix you, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand something most people never see. Your independence threatens more people than you think. Look at where it happens. At family dinners, in office break rooms, in group chats when someone announces an engagement. You say nothing, you just exist. And suddenly, you're the topic. You're too picky. You'll change your mind. Time is ticking. Different words, same pressure. Here's the twist. If being single was truly a weakness, no one would need to shame you for it. Oh, weakness doesn't intimidate people. Strength does. And what you represent, whether you realize it or not, is emotional self-sufficiency. At 21, they say you're avoiding commitment. At 30, they say you're falling behind. At 40, they say you're missing out. At 55, they say you must regret it. Notice the pattern? The timeline changes. The discomfort doesn't. Because this isn't about your age. It's about control. Most people build their identity around attachment, partner, spouse, chosen. You walk into rooms without that label. No ring, no +1, no external proof of desirability. And yet, you're steady. That's the part that unsettles them. You're not begging, you're not chasing, you're not scrambling to secure someone before it's too late. You look at fee, and someone who is fine alone is dangerous, because they can leave. Oh, they can walk away. They can say no. Shame is not random, it's a social leash, and leashes are only used on what might run free. The real question isn't why they pressure you. The real question is this: what about your independence makes them uncomfortable enough to try? There's an unspoken rule no one officially announces. By a certain age, you're supposed to be taken, not exploring, not undecided, not content alone, taken. And when you're not, the tone changes. At 23, it's playful teasing. At 29, it's subtle concern. At 34, it's side eyes. At 45, it's quiet judgment. Different delivery, same message. You should have locked someone down by now. But let's cut through the surface. That wasn't concern. It was discomfort. Watch closely the next time you say, I'm actually happy being single. Notice who shifts in their seat. Notice who laughs it off. Notice who immediately asks, but don't you want someone? That's your first piece of strategy. Pay attention to who gets uncomfortable when you say you're content. Because contentment without attachment disrupts expectations. Morphoid disruption makes people uneasy. Here's the deeper psychology. Most social pressure isn't direct. It's disguised as advice. You don't want to end up alone. Don't wait too long. You're not getting younger. That sounds caring. But underneath it is fear. And they know it. Fear that maybe they rushed. Fear that maybe they settled. Fear that maybe they attached before they truly understood themselves. But they won't admit it. So instead, they reframe your independence as immaturity. Projection is subtle. The friend in a draining relationship calls you afraid of commitment. The coworker who vents daily about their spouse jokes about your lonely weekends. The relative who sacrificed their dreams asks why you're so focused on yourself. That wasn't advice, that was projection. Yet here's what makes this powerful. If you begin to see the pressure as psychological displacement instead of truth, it loses its grip. Because pressure only works when you internalize it. The moment you observe it calmly, it weakens. And here's another uncomfortable layer. Society depends on predictability. Predictable people pair up, follow timelines, move in sync. But someone who says, I'm not in a rush, that person cannot be emotionally stampeded. And that's rare. Across all ages, the pattern holds. Young singles are called naive. Midlife singles are called stubborn. Older singles are called regretful. Labels change. The control attempt doesn't. The question isn't whether people will pressure you. They will. The real question is this: do you absorb it, or do you start seeing the mechanism behind it? Here's where it stops being social and starts becoming strategic. Attachment creates leverage. Not always toxic, not always manipulative, but leverage. The moment someone becomes emotionally necessary to you, they gain influence over your emotional state. Your mood shifts with their tone, your confidence dips with their distance, your stability reacts to their approval. That's power exchange. Now here's the uncomfortable part. If no one has that level of access to you, who controls your emotional baseline? You do. And that changes everything. When you say you're single and calm about it, people sense something they struggle with. You made peace with silence. Most people can't sit in silence for 5 minutes without reaching for their phone or another person. You can, that's not loneliness. That's regulation. And most people never learn it. In workplaces, this shows up fast. The unattached person can walk away from a toxic boss more easily. Relocate without negotiation. Take risks without checking in emotionally. That's leverage. In relationships around you, watch closely. Couples often argue in cycles because neither can tolerate detachment. They threaten to leave, but they rarely do. You don't threaten. You simply can. And that difference is felt. Here's the reset most people need to hear. At this point, most people make a critical mistake. They turn independence into ego. They become dismissive, defensive, performative. And that kills the power, because true emotional independence is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause. It simply refuses to panic. Across ages, the pattern is consistent. At 20, our emotional independence builds identity. At 30, it filters out low-quality partners. At 40, it protects your standards. At 60, it preserves dignity. Now here's the psychological contrast. Many people attach first and learn themselves later. You learned yourself first. That reverses the power dynamic. Because when you eventually choose, if you choose, it won't be from fear of missing out. It will be from clarity, and clarity is intimidating. Not because it's loud, but because it can't be rushed. And nothing frustrates insecure people more than someone who refuses to hurry. Here's where it becomes tactical. When someone shames you for being single, they're fishing. They want movement, an explanation, a crack in your confidence. Most people give it instantly. I just haven't met the right one. I've been busy. I'm focusing on myself. Stop. Every extra word lowers your position. You don't owe anyone a narrative. Try this instead. Them. You're still single? I'm good. Then stop talking. That's it. No smile that seeks approval. No defensive tone. No follow-up justification. Just, I'm good. And silence. Silence makes insecure people nervous, because silence forces them to sit with their own assumptions. At family dinners, this works. In office break rooms, it works. At weddings, especially, it works. Someone says, "Don't you want what they have?" You look at the couple, you take a breath, you say, "If it makes sense." Then you change the subject. Short, controlled, closed. Here's what just happened psychologically. You refused the frame. They tried to position you as lacking. You positioned yourself as selective. That's dominance without aggression. Another scenario. Friend, aren't you afraid of ending up alone? Instead of arguing, you say, "Alone doesn't scare me." Then you sip your drink. Pause. Watch their reaction. Most people can't imagine being enough for themselves. So when you calmly imply you are, it unsettles them. But here's the important distinction. You're not performing detachment. You're embodying it. Your tone is neutral. Your posture relaxed. Your pace slow. People test what they think they can influence. If you show emotional spikes, irritation, defensiveness, insecurity, they push harder. Or if you show calm containment, they retreat. And this works at every stage of life. At 22, it signals confidence. At 30, it signals standards. At 50, it signals self-sufficiency. You're not arguing your value, you're demonstrating it, because the strongest position in any social dynamic is this: the person who is not trying to convince anyone, and the moment you master that, the pressure shifts away from you. and onto them. Let's get sharper. Being single isn't a personality trait, it's a position. And most people don't understand the leverage in that position. When you are unattached, your time is not negotiated. Your energy is not rationed. Your direction is not diluted. That's not poetry. That's bandwidth. Look around. Most relationships are chosen from fear, not love. Fear of being left behind. Fear of sleeping alone. Fear of not being chosen publicly. And the fear-based decisions always come with hidden compromises. Compromised standards. Compromised goals. Compromised identity. That doesn't mean relationships are weak. It means rushed ones are. Here's the uncomfortable contrast. While others are managing emotional turbulence, you are building structural strength, skills, assets, health, networks, self-trust. That compounds. At 24, it compounds into competence. At 34, it compounds into authority. At 44, it compounds into influence. At 60, it compounds into autonomy. Compounding is quiet, but it's ruthless. Here's where most viewers need to pay attention. If you use your single season to chase validation, scroll endlessly, or numb yourself, you lose the edge. Independence without direction turns into drift. But independence with discipline, that turns into leverage, and leverage changes how people treat you. You text slower, you decide slower, you commit slower. Not because you're playing games, because you're evaluating alignment. That pace alone filters out manipulation. People who rely on urgency cannot control someone who is comfortable delaying a decision. And here's the real shift. You stop seeing singleness as absence. You start seeing it as calibration. Oh, calibration before commitment. Because when you eventually choose, if you choose, you won't be negotiating from fear. You won't tolerate subtle disrespect. You won't cling to potential. You won't attach just to quiet social pressure. You will choose from stability. And stability is intimidating, especially to people who rushed. So when someone tries to frame your independence as delay, understand what's really happening. You are refining, and refinement always looks slow to those who move from panic. Here's what this was never really about. Not dating, not marriage, not timelines. It was about control. The world feels stable when people follow predictable paths. Graduate, pair up, settle down, stay put. But when you step outside that rhythm, calmly, confidently, you disrupt the script. And disruption makes insecure systems react. That's why the pressure feels emotional, because it is. They're not attacking your relationship status. They're reacting to your autonomy. Across every age, the dynamic stays the same. At 19, they say you're inexperienced. At 29, they say you're late. At 39, they say you're missing something. At 59, they say you must regret something. But watch closely. The people who are truly secure never rush you. They don't interrogate your timeline. They don't project fear onto your choices. Moron, they don't need you to match their decisions. Only the uncertain try to recruit. So here's the shift. When someone questions you now, you don't feel small. You observe. When someone jokes about you being single, you don't flinch. You measure. When someone tries to create urgency, you don't accelerate. You slow down. And the moment you stop explaining your independence, everything changes. Pause. Because explanations signal doubt, silence signals certainty. When you stop defending your path, people recalibrate around you. They feel the boundary. They sense the stability. And suddenly, you're not the single one. You're the grounded one. The self-possessed one. The one who cannot be emotionally rushed. That identity shift is quiet, but it's permanent. You move through weddings without comparison, through holidays without panic, or through conversations without shrinking, single or partnered. It doesn't matter anymore. Because your power was never in your status. It was in your self-containment. And most people never reach that. If this changed how you see yourself, subscribe. Because most people won't tell you this. They benefit too much from you staying uncertain. But once you see the mechanism, you can't unsee it. And once you stop being rushed, you become untouchable. And here's the truth most people will never say out loud. The moment you stop explaining your independence, everything changes. Pause. Because when you stop justifying your timeline, your standards rise. When you stop reacting to pressure, your presence shifts. When you stop chasing validation, people start recalibrating around you. Single isn't a weakness. Needing constant reassurance is. And once you understand that deeply, you stop moving from fear, you start moving from choice. That's the difference between being socially approved and being internally powerful. So the next time someone tries to shame you for being single, don't argue, don't defend, just observe. Because awareness is leverage, and leverage is freedom. If this shifted something in you, if you felt that quiet click of clarity, subscribe. Not because you need motivation, but because most people will never tell you the psychological truth behind social pressure. And the more you understand the game, the less anyone can play it on you.